I am so excited to have this conversation with our next guest, Roger Roberts from McKinsey. Um, for the past 2 years, we've been working actively to create a strategic network of partners who are not only excited about the potential of artificial intelligence, but also excited about scaling that with trust at its core. And with that, we have been really excited to be part of the Generative AI Alliance with McKinsey and excited to have this conversation with Roger Roberts. Roger, welcome.
Well, thank you. And I'm super excited to be here too. This is such a fast-moving space. We are always feeling like we are inventing the future together.
Absolutely. So before we get started, Roger, would love to understand a little bit more about your role at McKinsey and how you're actually at the forefront of trusted AI adoption across all the enterprises that you're working with.
Well, thanks, Navrina. So I've been at McKinsey a long time, so 32 years now. And I'd have to say the last couple have been among those most exciting because we're really seeing the acceleration of AI across everything that we do and so many parts of our clients as well. And so in my role in the firm, I helped to found our IT practice back in the day, more than 25 years ago now. And have always tried to stay at the leading edge of what's changing fastest in tech. And so a couple of years ago, colleagues came to me and said, "Hey, Roger, would you join in with us as we launch our AI trust practice?" And I jumped at the chance because I see this as a critical challenge, both for our clients and for the world, which is to create the value that we need to from AI. We're going to have to build a wonderful trust capability. And so many of our clients were well behind where their AI aspirations sat.
Roger, that's a really interesting point. Could you dive a little bit more about something that McKinsey research has clearly identified as a big gap, that many enterprises see Gen AI as a priority, but most are feeling unprepared to adopt it in a trusted manner? What is that gap? Where is it coming from? I'm very interested to learn a little bit more about your Gen AI Alliance as a way to fulfill that gap.
Well, first of all, we are helping a lot of clients around the world on capturing the potential from AI. But as we do that, we get into an understanding of whether they have the right trust capabilities in place. And those can be the right people, the right processes, and of course, the right technology. And so as we think about our Gen AI Alliance, we really have benefited from Credo AI's partnership in that technology component, because in many cases, what we find in our clients is that no one has a single source of truth or a single pane of glass to look at their AI trust or governance context through. And Credo really does help to create that visibility, that transparency, and that ability for them to act on and not just talk about trust. So first of all, that's been a core part of our collaboration and partnership. Now, as we look beyond that, we really see that think about trust as an asset that our clients have to build as they build up their AI potential. If they don't have trust, they don't get to impact. So I always think simple equation, potential times trust equals impact. And if trust goes to zero, impact goes to zero. So as we really focus on delivering impact to all of our clients, right, we have to get the impact right. We have to get the impact there. We have to get the potential, and we have to bring the trust. And so Credo AI has been a tremendous part of helping us create that equation.
I love that. That is so true, especially in this fast-moving technology where if the trust does go to zero, the impact will go to zero. Would love to understand, Roger, maybe like concretely, give us an example of a potential client that you're working with to enable generative AI at scale. And where is this need for trust coming from? And primarily, I would love to dive deep into the people, process, and technology component that you mentioned. How are you operationalizing that at scale?
Mm. Well, imagine a consumer goods business, right? They've got multiple brands. They operate in multiple countries around the world. They've got a centralized IT team, but they also have highly decentralized decision-making across all their brands. Now, as they come together around how they want to use AI, they're using it in some internal-facing processes, but they're also using it increasingly in externally oriented communications and sites and marketing. And through that, they've really built a level of concern about, are we putting our brand at risk? Are we doing the right things to make sure that as we seek to capture this opportunity, we're also managing the mitigations? And so along that path, that's where these kinds of capability building really starts to matter. So bringing all the stakeholders, so their legal team, their chief information security officer, their brand leaders, their enterprise risk management team, and in fact, even the risk committee of their board, into alignment around, hey, this is the way we want to manage internally. And then here's the people, processes, and tools that we've got to put in place to make that happen. And to do it in a way that responds to a fast-changing regulatory world, where you might see very different pace and style of regulation in different markets, but while they also take advantage of their global scale and reach.
And it's interesting, Roger, like, a client that we worked on together, financial services, you are spot on that as we were thinking about what does AI transformation for that client really mean, there was a big need for having the people, processes, and technology. And maybe with respect to that client, like really talking about a little bit more context of what are the hurdles that they are facing in bringing this trust to bear. Would love your insights on what are, some of the tenets across people, processes, and technology that are the biggest hurdles to making trust a reality in AI.
Well, one thing is just starting to have the conversation about value and trust in the same room. Oftentimes what happens is we see clients bring forward a business case, and then, oh, yes, we get thumbs up. We love the value, the potential there. Now we start running the hurdle race, and we have to go to legal, we have to go to InfoSec, we have to go to audit. And in that hurdle race, it takes both a long time and there are lots of stumbles. In fact, if you can bring all those stakeholders on the risk side that are involved in operationalizing risk into the same room when we talk about value, and we can all decide together what the trade-offs are that we want to make, how we're going to choose to govern risks of different magnitudes, and then put in place a practical playbook for mitigations, we can get to value so much faster.
Yeah. And maybe Roger, like, would love to understand, and then, we can edit it out in later, but if you have some concrete examples of ROI of AI governance and trusted AI, whether it is acquisition of third-party AI systems or whether it is increased top-line innovation because you're able to bring in more AI, would love to understand what are some of the ROI metrics, especially you're seeing across these clients who are building with governance and trust right from the onset, not as an afterthought.
Well, so I think we see that in several different ways, right? The value of any business is driven by, some level of top line growth coupled with productivity improvement, coupled with risk reduction. Add those things together, that's the recipe for growing market value. And so when we think about it that way, we've seen clients that say, yeah, I can get what I wanted to do done faster. So I compress the time to value. That gives me top line growth. Second, it is a reduction in my cost of compliance, because I used to have many different checkers and series. Nobody knew exactly what role they were playing. Now we've got everybody playing the same game, and they're playing it knowing their positions and what role they need to play for what risks. And then third, I'm actually taking down those risks, right? I'm buying down those risks through the actions and mitigations that I take. And I'm finding ways to take risk off the table sooner by getting the right people involved in my development processes, not at the end, right when we're ready to go live, and that might create rework, but instead right at the start where we're envisioning and defining what it is we want to build.
And it's interesting, Roger, because one of the things that I appreciated about our joint partnership on that financial client was the people and processes part, the change management, which is so core to McKinsey, and you've done that at scale and brought about that transformation for the enterprises. And then when you think about the technology, when you are managing the scale of AI use cases, whether it's first party or third party, having that single system of record or pane of glass, as you mentioned, for governance becomes an accelerant, because you're able to get visibility across all the AI use within the company. You're able to have a very clear understanding of risks within the third-party AI systems. And then you're also able to mitigate those risks, but to your point, future-proofing these AI use cases against emerging standards and regulation. I would love to just dive deeper into, governance is sometimes seen as a barrier to innovation, because there are these checks and boxes, especially for high risk applications. How are you working with your clients, and especially in partnership with Credo AI on the technology side, making a case for governance as an enabler to AI innovation?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think we always need to assess where the client is. Sometimes they are in a state where there's so much uncertainty about how things should be governed, that's paralyzing innovation. And so just by starting to have some clarity on what the rules of the road are allows innovators the confidence and the freedom to move more quickly. Then I think we see clients a little bit further along, but where they haven't really brought the governance together into a shared set of capabilities, right? Maybe we're doing it differently in multiple business units. We certainly think a federated model makes sense, but there's got to be that central component of the federated model that helps really enable faster and more efficient scaling. And so that's usually another stage. And then you start to get to a level of maturity where people are starting to say, wow, I know how we can work, how we should work. And now I'm starting to realize that if I understand what we care about and what we need to do, I can design my initiative to move fast on that highway. And so then I'm now taking advantage of the fact that there's this well-lit path, this well-lit highway that I can drive down much more quickly than when it felt like as an innovator, I had to make my own path through the jungle.
Yeah. I'm curious, Roger, especially as you were curating the Gen AI Alliance, I know the amount of research that went into finding the right partners for that alliance. Why was trust so central to creating this Gen AI Alliance, especially with some of the frontier labs that are part of this alliance as well? And then, of course, I'm very curious the thinking behind bringing in Credo AI as a partner on that journey as well, which, why was that important?
Well, I think, first of all, I think there are going to be many innovators in this space. And so lots of sources of innovation. And hopefully all those innovators are thinking about trust back at the source, right? We hope that that's the case. On the other hand, we know that their focus is never going to be fully on trust. And so what we saw with Credo AI was that 100% focus on helping raise the bar on enterprise trust and create something that can be the platform for enterprises to truly work their way up the ladder of maturity. And so we saw that also there was a level of shared values and impact focus that made it an easy partnership for us, right? So that led us to you all and to this alliance, and I think they've been proven out in our interactions since then.
That's great to hear, Roger. Shifting gears a little bit, looking into the future. It's interesting, the pace of change and innovation in AI is one, at least in my 20 years in tech, is the fastest that we've seen. I'm curious, as we think about trust from Gen AI, now moving into agents, how are you at McKinsey thinking about agentic AI and autonomous AI future, and how should innovators be thinking about infusing trust in this very, I would say, high agency, highly autonomous, but also very unpredictable ecosystem of agents?
Well, so it is going to be an exciting next few years because as I think we look ahead to that agentic future, we're starting to see a real transformation in terms of the way our clients start to talk about the role of AI in their businesses, from something that allows us to have appropriate conversations, let's say, that's that are avoiding harm and that are appropriate to our brand standards and our people standards, to, okay, I'm going to start to trust technology to make real change digitally, and then maybe in the future physically. And so we have to think about this spectrum from initial conceptions of agents to multiple agents working together to multiple digital agents and embodied agents or robots and other kinds of forms working together. And so that's going to be an arc that we're going to live through over the next decade. And through that, trust will become even more important because, as with any human agent, you're fundamentally transferring some level of trust in the outcome to that agent. So as we think about this, our agentic trust infrastructure is going to have to get more policy driven, but also more real time. And so I've got to think not just about how I can control the individual actions of that agent. It'll never be possible to get the value if you're engaged in micromanaging your agents. On the other hand, we've also got to get the right level of environmental construct such that it can allow multiple agents to work together in a trusted way, and for agents and humans to work together in the same environments. This is not a solved problem by any stretch. And so it's going to require a lot of smart people collaborating together in new ways in order to, one, establish a set of standards, and I think a set of ways of working, right, which go beyond technical protocols, a set of principles that we'd like to see within a particular company or across companies, but potentially, and then really to start to think about how AI can play a role here in governing AI. This problem won't be solved by applying kind of traditional software to the AI domain any more than we can as humans watch over the shoulder of every autonomous vehicle on the road, right? If to get to the real value, we'll have to ultimately allow ourselves to start to untether. And that will be a change we're going to have to explore over 3, 5, 10-year horizon. But we're going to lay the groundwork for that over the next few. So again, exciting times ahead, lots more potential, and certainly, the risk that is embedded in systems will rise. Therefore, the trust to manage that risk and to make its residual component as small as we can will become even more important.
Roger, it's really interesting. One of our global partners is Microsoft, and we recently launched a pretty exciting capability with them integrating into Azure AI Foundry.
Mhm.
And we've been thinking about what does the standard for governance of agentic future look like. And
Mhm.
I love the tenants you were talking about, because those are the tenants we truly believe are going to be the future as well. And we are weaving a lot of that into our Credo AI product. So just to like highlight the need for policy to code, and especially across different chains of thought for the agent, is going to be really key. Uh, Absolutely critical is going to be the real time component. And this is something that we are very excited about. How do we connect into monitoring and observability platforms to bring that real time oversight? The need for using AI for testing these systems. It goes way beyond just procedural. It's a lot of technical. And then the hope is taking all these components to actually create a standard for agentic AI governance. So I really like that framework. And I would love to maybe just dive a little bit deeper into the clients you're working with right now. Is anyone thinking that ahead? How are they deploying AI agents? Are they already
Yeah.
doing that in production, or is it just still an experiment exercise for clients that you're serving?
Well, well, I think what we're starting to see are early instantiations of agents that are more in the mode of single agent behaviors, where an agent is front-ending another process, an agent is creating some highly constrained, operating within a highly constrained space, right? And in by and large, the clients that we're spending time with. Now, if I look at some of my technology provider clients, they're thinking way beyond that, obviously. And so I do think, as you described, right, policy to code, the ability to have humans have a natural language discussion and debate about what policy should be there, and then for that policy to be very rapidly instantiated will be important. I think simulation will also be important, so that we start, as we did with autonomous vehicles, we drive a lot of sim miles, and you can create agentic environment simulations. You can look at the effect of different policies on them within those constructs. And so I think those kinds of setups and also various kinds of sandboxed environments will be really important as we move into this space with confidence. Now, over the next, couple of years, I really expect some important advances in standards and specifications. And so I do think what we'll start to see is some cross-platform and cross-provider alignment against those. We've already got some around tool calling and agentic interactions, but those don't really extend all the way into the trust domain. So there's a lot of work to do between companies and across companies in order to get there. And I think it'll be very important for the providers and the enterprises to come together around that, and not for the industry from a provider's perspective to go try to solve it in one corner, and and others to solve it in a different corner, and government to solve it in the third corner, right? And we won't ever get to the right outcome in that model. It has to be those three vectors all coming together in the right way.
So, Roger, as we look into this future, and especially I want to bring in the framing that, we've pretty much aligned on when we've been working together, is this people, process, and technology, especially in a sort of agent-led workforce. I'm
Mhm.
curious, what role are you envisioning the people component to be playing versus like tooling like Credo AI to be playing?
Mhm.
And how do you see this evolution, especially in the agentic future, in the McKinsey's Gen AI Alliance taking place?
Mhm. Well, I think there'll be a lot of upskilling work to do with our people, right? So this is going to be something where you can't delegate to some sub organization off to the side to own and shape the policies and processes here, right? Obviously, you need some in house expertise and to build that center of excellence up, but there's going to need to be a lot of education of wide swaths of leadership here. And and for that to then go down to frontline leaders who then understand, well, what does it mean to have what might effectively over time feel like agentic coworkers? And then what does it also mean to delegate trust to an agent, right? We in security we talk about authentication and authorization, right? Oftentimes people focus too much on the authentication part and not enough on the authorization part, because the authorization part is where you get granular. What is it that I'm allowing that identity to do? And we're going to have to get a lot more specific in that space. I think we'll also have to start thinking hard about um, what it means for people to bring personal agents into the enterprise. I was with a CISO the other day that said, wow, it took us a while to get comfortable with BYOD. And now we're going to have every phone coming in a BYOA construct. And that is a different notion of personal technology existing inside my firewall than I've ever had to deal with before. So personal technology stayed where you put it. It was on your phone or in your device. But now that's no longer necessarily the case. So all of these things I think are going to put real pressure on our governance structures and teams. And so I do think there'll be a rising need for governance pros. And I think it's a great career, if anyone wants to take it, to both think about how you can be a part of being this kind of cross-functional integrator to bring together a perspective on trust on behalf of your users, on behalf of your customers, your employees. I think it's inspiring, and I think it'll be a space where a lot of innovation potential will exist in every company. No piece of software will necessarily solve all that problem, but it will be an incredible enabler to those who do solve those problems.
And Roger, you just basically laid out what the vision that Credo AI has been on. For us, it is how do we become the standard for trust in AI? That's been a core driving factor, and that's why these partnerships are so critical, because we are also big believers that no one company can accomplish it. It takes an ecosystem of collective intelligence, partners, people, technology that have to come together to really embed trust. And we've been discussing this whole notion of when you're bringing your own agent, BYOA, to an organization, you will need some sort of governance, whether it is human led or whether it is an AI led, to really make sure, is this agent going to be allowed
Mhm.
within that enterprise? And so
Right.
trust becomes really critical. So I'm excited to see a shared vision there. Maybe the last two questions, as you look ahead, I'm curious around what are some of the top opportunities, but also risks that very concretely you are tracking within an industry sector, within a particular client, because not only there is a set of common baseline risk, everything from hallucinations to agent misalignment to potentially, really having these agents sort of needing permissioning and then not having that permissioning and authorization, as we were just discussing. So
Mhm.
maybe could you give us like a sense of what are some of the core specific industry focused risks that you all are looking at and helping clients with, and also how you're turning that into an opportunity through trust and governance?
Well, for one thing that I've seen popping up just several times in the last kind of 10 days, let's say, with different clients, is that as they start to think about agentic workflows, they recognize that these sort of feel like what we as technologists might have thought of as long-running transactions. Now, we're used to transactions that have, quote, ACID properties and that we can therefore roll back, right? If I'm changing the state of a state machine or a database, I can roll that back if certain things happen along the way. Now, with agentic change, that may not be possible, right? We don't quite have the ability to rewind those agentic actions yet, or for them to lay down the trail of breadcrumbs that easily enable us to do that. So I think there's going to be real pressure on vendors to come up with clear ways to enable some form of transactional rollback. That's a topic that folks who start to think about transaction systems at scale really care about. And we haven't dealt with that before, right? We've been dealing with a interaction paradigm, not a transaction paradigm.
A very complex problem to solve, Roger. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. The last question, as you can see that this ecosystem of AI capabilities is obviously evolving with a lot of new exciting application level developers, not just the foundation, model developers. On the governance and tooling side, there is a little bit more noise that has been created recently with AI security taking center stage, with observability sort of coming to forefront, with new kind of evaluation platforms also showing up. I would love maybe a view of how are you seeing this ecosystem of tooling sort of take shape, and especially the need for a single pane of governance, what we call, the AI governance category. What role does that play in this very emerging, vibrant, and constantly changing vendor ecosystem? So just like would love your perspective on what are you seeing in the market?
Well, there's clearly a lot of motion and not yet, the full consolidation that we will maybe see at some stage of this market. I mean, you do see in most tech markets over time, but what we see right now is that under the broader umbrella of trust, you have a set of things that are about establishing, let's say, safety or low harm operation. There's a set of things that are around establishing some explainability and understanding the why of the AI. And then there's a set of things that are around correctness, right? And am I evaluating to the right goal? Am I aiming at the right objective? And would humans and analytics agree on whether I'm getting closer together to that? And so if I think about those three things, then I bring together that with the security dimension, right? Security's always been there, new threats, new threat vectors, but now some of those kinds of adversarial attacks being mediated through AI. So I have to then put four pieces together, three kind of new ones, right? The AI explainability and correctness and ultimately safety together with security. And we kind of see that adding up to the notion of trust. Now, what connects those all? Well, governance, right? Governance and having a clear registry of what AI is operating in my environment, and knowing from an observability first perspective first, what have I got out there, and then what's it doing, and then what policy have we set against it, and is that policy being enforced? So we have to think about all those pieces over time fitting together, and it's going to mean really some new kind of AI trust architect jobs that probably get created in the world inside different enterprise technology teams to think about how do I stitch all these things together in an environment where the standards are just starting to emerge.
Roger, I love that. We've been talking about creation of new roles with AI taking away some roles. And one of the roles we've been talking about quite a bit is the governor role. Like what role humans are going to play in this oversight of these AI agents. But I really like the notion of the AI trust architect, because I think as you are literally like 10xing the digital workforce, which is going to be powered by AI agents, it's going to be so critical to figure out how do you actually orchestrate trust among these 100,000 digital agents that are working on behalf of your enterprise. So certainly see more opportunities for folks in governance and AI innovation. So really excited about that. Roger, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.